Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. And for those who are very familiar with the series, welcome back. This is my reading week from the 7th until the 15th of March. I read a total of 9 books this week, but I'm going to talk about 7 of them today. I read a total of 2,197 pages and my yearly reading total is up to 88 books. This was my week where Kathy chose my TBR. I'll leave a link to my TBR video as well as Kathy's channel down below. She picked 4 really wonderful books for me. I had a great time reading them this week, so thank you very much to Kathy. Let's dive into the books that I read this week. The first book that Kathy asked me to read was Words in Deep Blue by Kath Crowley. This was actually a reread for me, and it was really funny when I went through to reread this book because I had forgotten that this book had been given to me as a gift by one of my students from a few years back because they were family friends with Kath Crowley, so it's actually signed and personalised to me, which was really nice to go back and look at it, and was especially poignant because this book is all about a bookstore that has what's called a letter library. It's a secondhand bookstore. It has a little section out the back that is purely for books that people can read and write in, and they basically write down their stories and their histories and all sorts of things. So I thought that was really nice to go back and remember that this had actually been signed and personalised to me for a really lovely reason. This is a 2016 release from Pan Macmillan. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars on reread. I absolutely adored going back into it. Along with reading this for Kathy's picks for the week, it also fit one of Kirsty's reading challenges, which was to read an Australian book, so it was nice to tick off multiple challenges. This is the story of Rachel Sweetie, who moved away from her home in the city a few years back, leaving behind best friend and crush Henry Moore. And she spent the last few years living in a seaside town with her mother and brother and her grandmother until the death of her brother which has taken place just before the beginning of the book, basically sends their family into disarray, and Rachel is given the option of returning back to her old hometown to live with her aunt. And part of the deal of her moving away from her mother and grandmother is that she has to work, and so her aunt finds her a job cataloguing the books at Howling Books, which is the bookstore run by Henry's family, and it was a place she spent a lot of time in before she moved away. She hasn't spoken to Henry since she moved away, and the two have a very rocky relationship at the beginning of this book. But as the story progresses, it is how they reconnect, and how they reconnect through books, how Rachel has to begin to trust people and open up about her feelings about what happened with her brother's death. The whole thing is just absolutely gorgeous. The letter library is incredible, and this book really is a love letter to books and to reading and to people who love to read. Then I read Jack of Hearts and Other Parts by L.C. Rossin. This is a 2018 release from Penguin Random House. I gave this 5 stars. It is sort of a young adult contemporary mystery book. Along with being one of Kathy's challenges for me, it also fit Kirsty's challenge to read a book with a title longer than 4 words. It also fit a Romanceopoly challenge of mine, which was to read a YA book by a new to you author. And while this wasn't strictly a romance book, there was elements of it threaded through, so I'm counting it, so we'll just go with it. This is the story of Jack Rothman, who is 17. He's in high school and he loves a lot of things, including partying. He loves to wear makeup and he likes to sleep with guys, but he's not in the market for a relationship. One of his friends runs a blog and she decides that she wants him to write a sex advice column for the blog just to get in more readers for the blog, and he's reluctant at first, but then people start sending in letters and he decides to tackle them head on, and he offers very practical, very on point advice to their questions. He's already the topic of gossip in the school, and this sort of makes it even worse, although technically no one can prove that it's him. It's not his actual name on the blog. As a result of writing this column, he begins to receive letters from a secret admirer, and at first they're quite innocent and then they become a little bit more sinister, and the person behind the notes wants Jack to tone down his sexuality and to be less obvious and out there, or risk something happening to the people that he cares about. So this takes quite a dark turn pretty quickly, but Jack is a really great character. I loved him as a character. I thought he was just really, really brilliant, and the friends he has around him, their concern for him, and the way it takes him a while to recognize that they are genuinely concerned and they want to help him. And also his relationship to the adults in his life as well. I thought they were really well done. This was a really, really great read. I really enjoyed it. Then I read Slay by Brittany Morris. This was a 2019 release from Hodder. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Again, it's a young adult book. It is about Kira Johnson, who is also 17, and she is one of the only black kids at
Jefferson Academy, and this sometimes causes a bit of stress for her, as her white friends don't really necessarily understand her or her culture or her background and the things that influence her life. What most people don't know is that Kira is the creator behind an online role-playing card game called Slay, which is an invite-only space that celebrates Black culture and Black references. And it's a game that really unites the Black community and brings them together as they can sort of be who they are in this safe space. That is until a teen is killed in a dispute that took place in Slay but then transferred out into the real world. And suddenly there's a whole lot of media attention on the game and people begin to call it racist and exclusionist, and Kira has to wear that and has to try and find a way to save her game, this safe space that she has created. The whole thing was just really great because unlike other stories that really had a video game feel, while we got elements of the game and being in the game, it wasn't just about the game. It was about the people who were behind it and the stories that they brought into the game themselves that really made this story, and it was really great and it was nice to learn a few things. Then I read This Is How It Always Is by Laurie Frankel. This was a 2017 release from Headline. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book, guys. I really, really did. I included this for Kirsty's challenge to read a book with indigo on the cover because it's quite a dark blue. It's a night sky, so I'm counting it, even though it's probably more blue than indigo. But this is the story of Rosie and Pen and their family. At the beginning of the book, they have 4 boys and they're trying for a girl. When Claude is born, they have 5 boys and their world is fine. They have wonderful boys. Rosie is a doctor, Pen is an aspiring author, and he tells his children these wonderful fantasy stories each night before bedtime, and the stories that Pen tells them reflect their lives. And everything's going really wonderfully. And Claude, the youngest, is a delightful child. He has a love of everything, and then one day when he's asked what he wants to be when he grows up, he tells his parents he wants to grow up to be a girl. They don't think much of it at the time, and then they begin to see the way that Claude interacts with the world and his preferences for things that are different to their other sons. This is really a story about family and acceptance. It's about a family who accepts Claude for who Claude is, but they also struggle with sharing that with the world, and so there are secrets that they build into their lives, and eventually those secrets sort of come out and they have some lasting effects on everyone. This was just a beautiful story about a family going through something that plenty of other families go through, and they have to deal with their own misconceptions and their own prejudices and their own preconceived notions, and the whole thing was just so beautifully written, and it's one I've been recommending to people since I finished reading it in the middle of the week. So I loved it. So those were the 4 books that Kathy recommended to me. So thank you very much again, Kathy. I really enjoyed reading all of them. I did read a few more books before the end of the week, so I'm going to try and get through them really quickly. I did read Bourne, which is the 5th book in the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. This was a 2010 release from Little Brown Books. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I read it for Kirsty's challenge to read a book with an animal on the cover, and I also read it for the Romanceopoly challenge, The Vault. You've heard me talk about the Mercy Thompson books over the last couple of weeks. Again, these books are all interconnected and they take place, very quickly after each other. So Mercy is still recovering from the events of the last couple of books, and then while she's at work, she has a surprise visit from a group of bounty hunters who are searching for a werewolf. This causes a whole lot of chain reactions with the people that she knows and cares about, and Mercy ends up finding herself investigating the disappearance of an ally who had once loaned her a Fae book. This then, of course, leads her into investigating something to do with the Fae. Anytime Mercy gets involved in the Fae, weird things begin happening. At the same time, her longtime friend Samuel, who is a very dominant werewolf who has been living with her, he sort of begins to go off the rails, and it's how she deals with his story and tries to save him as well. And the whole thing was just really delightful. I really enjoyed this book. It was nice to see how a lot of these characters finally got some closure and some peace for their stories, and I can't wait to read the next book. Then I read Come Tumbling Down by Shauna Maguire. This is book 5 in the Wayward Children series, which is a series about children who go through portal doorways. This is a 2020 release from Tor. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. We return to Jack and Jill's world in this book, and it's really hard to talk about this particular book because it does spoil books 1 and 2. So I'm not going to talk too much about it except to say that I think after book 1 and book 2, this is my favourite book of the series so far. I love being back in the moors. I think the world is delightfully creepy and I would not want to go there. And it's really interesting that the characters who do get to visit this world this time make a comment about that. And they all come from some very strange worlds, and even they really struggle in the moors. and yet Jack and Jill are very at home here. I just love sort of the gothic elements that are woven into this story, so it's well worth picking up this series. I'm not going to say anything else about it. Just know that the Jack and Jill stories are my favourite. And finally, the last book I'm going to talk about is Leadership Really Matters by Maxine Driscoll. This was a book that was actually gifted to me by Maxine, so thank you very much. And this is a book on educational leadership. I'm not entirely sure the year that it was published because I think this was self-published through Black Card Books. And it is just a very short book on how to be an educational leader in the modern day. It was just really interesting. There's a lot of theories in here that Maxine mentioned that I have heard about through various courses that I've done, and it was great to see them reinforced. And this is written in a very easy to follow format with some really simple steps and guides to follow and some actions to take. So I'm going to be coming back to this over the next couple of weeks for sure. So those are the books that I have read in the last 7 days. In the comments below, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on reading them in the future. Alternatively, feel free to let me know what you have been reading. I would love to know. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are staying safe, you are looking after yourself. I hope that you have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.